Samar, a team member at the Legal Amity. In today's episode of the Insider Info series, I was joined by Claire Jutsum, a graduate specialist with over 18 years' experience in the legal industry. So, let's get into the interview.
So in today's episode of the Insider Info series, I am here with Claire Jutsum. Claire, thank you so much for joining us today, and it would be wonderful if you could give us a brief introduction about yourself.
Hello everybody, it's a pleasure to be invited to do this interview, and basically my background is in graduate recruitment. I worked for 18 years in a well-known law firm, and basically I'm currently set up a business online just to help students and offer my services whilst I'm looking for a job. So obviously current times not great, so having kind of spent a lot of the summer helping students, I just put together some packages really that would hopefully help students, including lots of free information on my website for people who just need help with their CVs and applications. And I'm doing some webinars and obviously this interview with you today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Claire, for that. So if we can jump right in and go on to the first question. So, in your experience, what do you find is the best way to approach the work experience section in applications?
Okay, so the work experience will probably be past this slide, so I should just go over to that now. So for work experience, basically you're thinking about the trainee skills that you need, and you need to show that you're developing. So you may not have them yet. Obviously, if you're only a second year law student, you might not have had enough experience to really put a lot towards your application. So any other experiences that you do have, you should use to as much as you can to explain how you're developing sort of customer experience skills, team working. All of those things are really crucial. So you just use what you can, and obviously you will build up more work experience as time goes by through virtual schemes, open days, law firms that you'll go to events to, people you'll network with. So basically it's any kind of work experience that you can use for examples in your application, and obviously if you've got more legal ones, that's ideal. Also bear in mind, if you're a non-law student, it's absolutely fine not to have the legal work experience, because otherwise firms wouldn't look for the potential to recruit people who are sometimes in their third year when they start looking. So think about all of that, and then realize that it's a case of timing, for when you actually want to apply, because it depends on what experiences you feel you have to offer in an application. A lot of people might find their first year that they decide to apply, they might get it wrong, it might not work, and then you just wait for another year. So timing's quite important, it's quite individual. So yes, it's just incorporating all the skills that you currently have. Obviously, you can only work with what you've got and then look to develop other ones, but just focus on what training skills are required and just work them into your application answers. And it's important to have a condensed detail of these experiences, because you don't want it too long. You basically need to work out the main information from what you want to say, which takes a bit of experience, a bit of time to do. Often you have a word count, so you have to bear that in mind. So the examples which they like to see, which the questions might be geared to, would be like management, leadership, any responsibility positions that you've held, and teamwork. So all of those are just like really crucial. If you can try and tie those in to your applications for the work experience sections, then that should be half the battle. And I've put wow factors because I do get a lot of applications I see that I'm working on, or CVs where people have been promoted from a position, which obviously it looks really good to a recruiter to know that you did, you sort of excelled in the position that you were in. You might have been there only a couple of weeks, but you might have been told, I would like to have you back if next year, or would like you to promote you to another position if you'd like to do another week. Anything like that just shows the recruiter that you've really accomplished something in that particular work experience. And then I've put a top tip, so sort of you're aligning what your unique selling points. So you've got sort of certain skills that you obviously will feel that you have stronger, so try and align those with the firm.
Section, I think, does scare a number of people, especially when they think, oh well, we don't have that much experience, how are we meant to really shine in this section? And even voluntary experiences that you've been able to gain, whether you're, while you're studying, or even outside of study during, holidays or whatever that may be. Those experiences, as you mentioned, can help you illustrate some really fundamental skills like teamwork, communication, collaboration, leadership, and, as you said, management. All those things can be
Yeah.
gained even through, voluntary work experience as well, and they
Well,
still
voluntary
class.
is ideal. Yeah. Oh, definitely. And a lot of pro bono work will come, you'll have the opportunity to do pro bono when you're maybe doing your LPC. So there's lots of different stages that people will be at. But actually, although it's nicer to get a training contract and get your fees paid, if you are on the LPC and you haven't and you're in that position, at least you've got the added advantage of your CV looking a lot more filled out with experiences to do with, client, looking after clients, giving them advice. So really try not to think of anything as a disadvantage.
So one of the key questions that a number of applicants get struggle on is, how do I approach the question of why am I applying to X firm? So what suggestions and advice would you give to those looking at that question?
Yeah, so this is like a really popular one, and even if you don't get asked it, it's something you need to understand yourself, and also if you get through to the interview stage, because that is what the firm want to know, is why you want particularly to apply to them. Have you identified where they are different to other firms? Have you matched up your skill set to what they're looking for? So it's basically a case of being quite genuine as well, because if you feel that you really do like that firm, then it will come across, and that's important, not only in your application but at the interview stage. So just basically genuinely you like the firm, you will have already signed up for an event, most probably. You might have networked with some of the trainees. All these factors tie into answering that question, and you can use people's names that you have liaised with, as long as they are tied into a reason. You might have spoken about a deal that the firm were working on, or what they were working on, and it might have been in an area that interests you. You might be asking about their diversity and inclusion initiatives, which is obviously completely highlighted at the moment, knowing what the firm are doing to improve that. I mean, all those things will come into your application. So it's quite broad, really, why you're applying. It can cover every aspect of the firm, to be honest. And yeah, just stay focused on the fact that firms are kind of looking for the potential. They want people who do want to stay long term, because if they're paying or recruiting you from the stage of university, they're actually paying a lot of money. I mean, for non-law students, it'll often be almost 50% of their intake could be non-law. So that means that they are investing in the right people, the people who they think will be partners maybe in the long term, and have the ability to progress within the firm. So if you think about it like that, it makes sense that they want to understand that you really want to work for them. So I think that's important to get across at the question stage. But obviously, if it feels completely genuine and real, then that will also come across during your interview. The more reasons you have, the better.
And when you're looking at firms, in your opinion, what is the best approach to actually researching a firm?
So that was in one of the other slides, but don't worry, I can remember. So really, the publications, Google, I mean, it's all there. And obviously the firm websites, that's the most obvious one in the world. But I think some people worry about either their lower A levels, or they worry about the university they've attended. Now, it shouldn't really be a factor, because if you've got a strong academic CV since maybe that time, and you've done a lot of work experience, or you've really gone out there to do schemes, you found out about you can really kind of work on all that and show that on your CV and progress. But from that point of view, the trainee websites are good, because they'll normally list like the trainees currently at the firm, and you can actually look to see what they studied, what university they went to. So if you're not seeing what you might imagine, some people just think it's Oxbridge. I don't think a lot of firms are really like that anymore. They do try to be diverse, but do your research from that perspective, because then you can look at all the universities that they've recruited from and go, oh, that's okay then, and it would just automatically make you feel more confident in applying. I mean, every firm is different. Of course, it varies hugely, which is why it's important to check. But however much people might tell you about a certain firm, every year it's going to change anyway. So I would basically focus on that. The Chamber Student Guide's also one that I always recommend as a really good source. They have the True Picture, which is basically quotes from interviews that they've actually held with trainees at the firm, which give a positive and negative view. They won't actually take out all the negatives. They will actually put in some, because they don't want it, it's got to be the true picture. So that's a very good resource for looking at what the trainees actually really do think about the firm. You can sort of read a bit in between the lines a little bit, and it will just give you a bit more of a natural kind of feel if you're not too sure about the firm, or you haven't really experienced it yourself through a scheme or vacation scheme or networking. The other sources of information you can get from, like, the Lex 100, lawcareers.net is obviously great, Prospects, and Legal 500. So they're quite general, obvious sources, to be honest. But the real kind of way you're going to find out more about the firms is through talking to some of the trainees. So I think if you've got a specific firm you're really keen on, just go on LinkedIn and just find some trainees to chat with, really. And obviously, if you get on a vacation scheme, you have a lot of networking opportunities available to you, where you'll be able to, ask them lots of questions and find out more. So ideally, you really want to get a vacation scheme, and this is more applicable now, because there used to be 2 weeks in the office, whereas now they're only about 2 or 3 days online. So you really can't go wrong. My advice would be to get as many as you can, because the more information you have on the firm, the stronger your application will be as a result. Which is why sometimes they ask you, why do you want to come on the vacation scheme? Because they're actually looking for people who want to then apply for a training contract. So the key is to actually say, well, I want to apply for a training contract. I want to find out about the firm. I want to have a stronger application. Whereas some people might just apply straight for the training contract, which is fine, but you might know less about the firm. And if you can just have those few days where, you're virtually dealing with all the people, seeing them, and you're just sitting from home, and you've got 2-3 days to do that, that's the only advantage of the pandemic.
So how do I approach the question of interests outside of work?
So yes, so this question is basically the firms are trying to really kind of find out about you, what kind of person you are and what you do outside of work, because it's also interesting for the firm to understand who they're recruiting, how they get on with other people. Do they like to do team sports and activities? Are they more of a loner? So it's kind of quite important to show an overall kind of side to yourself. But yeah, I think just basically focus on the fact that what you've already put down for the answers for your other questions, they're just trying to look for something that's sort of alternative. But if you can tie it into sort of learning and developing yourself, like even personal development, that's kind of important, because you don't want to just put something down and just say, oh, I was part of the netball team and then we played a few matches. But it's worth it if you were like the captain, or you had a more leadership role. So although you can think, to be completely honest, it's better just to pick something where it makes it's a bit more of a wow. It's like, oh, that was good. You had that responsibility. If you read that question on the left, everybody, and then think about on the right. So it's provide an example of developing a new idea, but where you had to challenge the status quo. So you've basically had to come up with something and try and persuade other people that it is a good idea and that it's an innovative idea, because it's quite difficult to come up with new things where people resist change. So it can be quite difficult, but I've worked with quite a lot of people's applications where they have come up through various work experiences with better ways of doing things, better systems they've set up. They've gone around and approached their managers and said, I've sort of come in, obviously, from, just come in, be annoying. No, but I've come in and I've actually worked out a really good idea about how we can sort out all this and make, all this information and make it more user friendly, or put it in a better format, or use technology to speed it up. So I think as a law student doing work experiences or legal work experiences, firms love the idea that you can come in, because that's what they're looking for, I guess. For when you're a trainee, when you're working with clients, you're working with solutions and ideas. So if you can already show that you did a work experience where you came up with something that was different, probably most people might have one example, hopefully, then that's great, because
the main issue that they face is being concise enough. And is that something that you find, that when you're looking at applications, that individuals who are submitting these applications aren't actually being concise enough?
This is exactly where I step in, because I'll basically have a whole paragraph put down into 2 sentences. People will use 3 or 4 sentences where one is sufficient. So yeah, it's something that takes a while to do, and it's sort of, I think it's just natural to say what you want to say and not think about cutting it down. But obviously, once you get to the word count and you're way over, then you know you have to. Sometimes people might have less information and then they're actually short on numbers, but then it's better to be less than more. So normally I sort of, my suggestion is to actually write everything down, and it's better to be a bit over actually to a point. And then what you do, you just have to go through everything you've written and just take out the bits and pieces that are less important. So yeah, it's just a bit of a skill that takes a while to get used to, and you will get better. It just takes time and practice. But this was just an example of a sentence someone did provide, and then this is just how I shortened it. So for example, you know, you're thinking in your mind about how you did it, so you're almost being too genuine and too truthful. Yeah, like going, I communicated to my team and I was trying to establish where I could be most help, so I resorted to reviewing all the documents. Anyway, so that, even the beginning bit, all you have to do is say, we distributed team tasks. The recruiter doesn't need to know your thought process.
Really? So, Claire, what advice would you give us if we had to write about any specific deals throughout our applications?
Yeah, sure. So the application normally does include information where you may feel that you want to talk about the deal in a current firm, in the firm that you're writing about, or a few deals, because you might be tying in the reasons for your interest in a particular practice area, in which case if you are interested in a certain practice area, then it would make sense that you would look at what they're currently looking, you know, what current deals are ongoing. So in that respect, you will do some research, or you might just generally been following something anyway. But it's important not to just factually put information in, because there's no point listing everything about the deal and the amount and the money, and the firm know that you're not telling them anything new. So whatever you put in, it has to really be incorporated into why, you know, you find it interesting and what part of the deal you're following and how it ties into maybe some modules or lectures that you were doing, just to make that quite obvious. So you know, you can say you're looking forward to the outcome of the deal, and currently you can mention a few things here or there, but just try to stay clear from just stating what they already know. And again, whatever deal you pick, just be really careful, because if you do get through to the interview stage, partners will often have your application and obviously be looking for things to ask you. So it's really important to actually know that particular deal that you've stated, or deals, with probably more than one, because then they might ask you actually something quite complex about that deal. So if you don't really understand it and you've just put it down because you would sort of have to put something down, then you'll kind of be caught out.
So what advice would you give us to show that confidence and set ourselves?
Yeah, so basically you won't use the second row, you'll use the first row. But don't worry, it's fine, because you haven't sent the application off just yet. So the best thing to do is to go through it and just make a note. I mean, obviously leave it a day because your brain will be fuzzed. So just go back to it and then go, right, every time I see something where it's slightly not positive, I'm going to change it. And then just go through and change it afterwards. If you're not doing it at the time, it doesn't matter. You can go through that afterwards. You can just say, right, today I'm going to do the confidence selling part of the application, and just go through and change everything, because that's what I'll do to applications that I get. I'll just make sure that they're more positive, because you know, people are just being too honest, you know, like, oh, I hope I get accepted to the vacation scheme. It's like, no. My abilities are good enough, you know, my abilities show that I would be blah blah. Yeah, so you have to just really use positive affirmations, because you have to show that you're confident, and obviously nobody's that 100% confident, but if you do it on the paper, and then hopefully once you get through to interview, and boost yourself and show the confidence, because you know you'll get there eventually. It's just that, you know, it's a harder stage to get there, to just to get through, but you have to sell yourself, because this is the time to do it.
So Claire, thank you so much for giving us and imparting your wisdom. It has been really wonderful to obviously speak to you and get your insights, you know, from the vast amount of experience that you have, especially because a number of us are obviously going through the application process now. So, you know, for our viewers, please definitely check out Claire's website, which I will list below. She has some wonderful, wonderful resources that will be so helpful to a number of us as we're going through the application cycle. So definitely check those out. And Claire, thank you once again. We really appreciate your support and your help.